London, United Kingdom, a political announcement in Britain has reverberated far beyond Westminster. In a move described as historic, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer declared that Britain is formally recognising the State of Palestine, a decision that signals a decisive shift in the nation's foreign policy and places the UK in alignment with more than 150 countries around the world. The announcement came directly from Starmer in a carefully worded message on X, formerly Twitter, and quickly circulated through international media outlets. Speaking with deliberate conviction, the British leader connected today's policy to the legacy of past decisions made at critical turning points in history. Starmer's words were unambiguous. He said, "I set out in July the terms upon which we would act in line with our manifesto to recognise Palestinian statehood. That moment has now arrived. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine." For years, successive UK governments had held back on taking this step, preferring to insist that recognition should come at the end of negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. By moving now, Starmer has departed from that position, citing both the need to restore faith in diplomacy and Britain's responsibility as a historic actor in the Middle East conflict. The symbolism runs deep. Britain was among the first nations to recognise Israel as a state more than 7 decades ago. Now, Starmer has framed his decision as completing a circle. He said, "We recognised the State of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognise a Palestinian state also." This comparison was not accidental. It was a direct effort to place Palestinian statehood recognition on the same historic footing as the earlier recognition of Israel. The timing of the UK's announcement is crucial. In the aftermath of renewed fighting in Gaza and continuing international frustration over stalled peace negotiations, London's shift could either re-energise the push for a two-state solution or inflame tensions further. The British government has faced years of lobbying from activists, parliamentarians, and foreign diplomats urging recognition as a way to inject new momentum into the peace process. Yet opponents have long argued that premature recognition might embolden hardline factions or undermine Israel's security. By moving forward now, Starmer has clearly calculated that the benefits outweigh the risks. His statement underscores an attempt to balance solidarity with Palestinians while affirming Israel's right to exist in secure borders. Initial responses abroad have been mixed. Several European governments welcomed the announcement, suggesting that it may pave the way for similar moves by other Western nations. France, Spain, and Ireland, countries where public support for Palestinian recognition is strong, are watching Britain's step closely. On the other hand, Israel reacted sharply. Officials in Jerusalem accused London of undermining negotiations and rewarding what they described as Palestinian intransigence. Netanyahu's government, already battling diplomatic fallout from international criticism of military operations, condemned the recognition and hinted at possible diplomatic consequences. In Washington, the Biden administration was more cautious. While continuing to voice support for a two-state solution, American officials emphasized that negotiations, not unilateral recognitions, remain the preferred path. Within Britain, the move has triggered both celebration and controversy. Supporters hailed the decision as long overdue. Human rights groups, Palestinian advocacy organizations, and segments of the Labour Party's base framed it as a moral correction to decades of delay. They argue that formal recognition strengthens legitimate Palestinian institutions while isolating extremist elements. Critics, however, question the timing. Some Conservative Party voices argue that the recognition risks undermining Britain's credibility with Israel and may have little practical impact on the ground. Security analysts warn that without a clear mechanism for peace enforcement, recognition alone could fuel disappointment rather than progress. For Starmer, the calculation appears twofold, demonstrating moral clarity abroad while also signalling Labour's foreign policy identity at home. After years of political turbulence in the UK, the decision projects leadership and places Britain firmly in the international spotlight. Starmer's choice of words and platform was deliberate. By using social media to announce the recognition, he ensured immediate global reach while maintaining direct authorship of the message. The Prime Minister tied the recognition directly to his manifesto promises, presenting it as both a fulfilment of political commitment and an act of international statesmanship. His emphasis on reviving hope was a rhetorical attempt to contrast pessimism over endless conflict with Britain's willingness to take a stand. The most powerful line, "Today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine," has already been replayed in international broadcasts, underscoring its centrality to the message. The UK's recognition does not automatically change realities on the ground in the West Bank or Gaza, but symbolically, it alters the diplomatic landscape. For Palestinians, the announcement is validation of decades of struggle for international legitimacy. For Israelis, it raises questions about Britain's stance in future negotiations, particularly if London uses recognition to push harder for concessions. Diplomats note that recognition gives Palestinians more leverage in international institutions, from the United Nations to the International Criminal Court. At the same time, it may also increase scrutiny of Palestinian leadership as the expectation for responsible governance grows. For Britain, the move could strengthen ties with Arab states while complicating aspects of its relationship with Israel. In the Middle East, recognition will likely be celebrated in capitals such as Amman, Cairo, and Riyadh. In Washington and Jerusalem, it may strain coordination. Analysts suggest that Starmer is seeking not only to address an urgent diplomatic question, but also to shape his own legacy. In domestic politics, the decision marks him as a leader willing to take risks on the world stage. In international politics, it positions Britain as a progressive force in resolving one of the world's longest-running conflicts. The recognition may come to be remembered alongside earlier British diplomatic milestones, from the Balfour Declaration to the recognition of Israel in 1948. Whether it will be celebrated as visionary or condemned as reckless will depend on how events unfold in the coming years. Starmer's announcement threaded a delicate line. By referencing the recognition of Israel 75 years ago, he avoided the perception of bias, instead portraying the UK as equally committed to both people's right to self-determination. He said, "We recognise the State of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognise a Palestinian state also." This line encapsulated the essence of the message, that recognition of Palestine is not a rejection of Israel, but an extension of Britain's historic commitment to fairness and peace. The United Kingdom has now stepped firmly into a role that many had long urged it to play. By recognising the State of Palestine, Britain is attempting to revive a peace process that has stalled for years, restore credibility to the two-state solution, and align itself with the majority of the international community. The consequences of this recognition will ripple across diplomacy, security, and domestic politics for years to come. But for now, one thing is clear: Britain has chosen to act rather than wait, to lead rather than follow. And in the Prime Minister's own words, words that will be studied, praised, and criticised in equal measure, the recognition is about hope. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine.
I set out in July the terms upon which we would act, in line with our manifesto, to recognise Palestinian statehood. That moment has now arrived. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine. We recognised the State of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognise a Palestinian state also.